Welcome to The Real Game, a podcast by coaches for coaches. I am your host, Matt Philbrick. Welcome back to this episode of The Real Game. As always, I am your host, Matt Philbrick. I had a funny conversation just the other day with a friend of mine talking about managers. And I've had some good managers in the past. And oddly enough, I don't have a manager at all right now, and I'm feeling the pain. So I was talking to somebody the other day about some good managers that I've had in the past, and the name Jon Groves came up. And I am fortunate enough to have Jon Groves live with me tonight. So, Jon, how are you, man?
Bro, I'm doing so good. This is a dream come true. I mean, in my sports career, this is the highlight right here.
So, what I remember from your sports career, I'm just gonna say it. All right. First of all, this episode is completely unscripted. Like I was telling Jon before we started. Usually I send questions and prepare my guests, and here's what we're going to talk about. And I didn't do that with Jon because I knew I was very confident we could carry on a very good conversation without any prep work whatsoever. That's just the kind of guy that Jon is.
Let's go.
But I can say this, and I know this isn't going to hurt Jon's feelings at all. Jon does not really have an athletic bone in his body. But he is the best manager I ever had, and he understands sports, and he understands coaches, and he, for that role, you were perfect. I'll just say that.
It was. So first of all, not offended, totally correct. Up until the advent of pickleball just recently, I thought I would never be good at any sport. I'm still not great at it, but I'm okay.
Yeah. So you took up pickleball. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, here's the thing. With the park where I take my daughter, there's always a bunch of old white people out there playing. And I was like, that looks like
myself.
That looks like a thing that I could do. And I tried golf and I was like, this is kind of boring. And most of the other sports involved quite a bit of running. And I was like,
forget
that's not for me. This is the one. But that's
awesome.
The managing for all of the different teams that you coached when I was in high school, soccer and basketball, and I don't know what all else we did over there. I was the manager for all the teams, and it still is one of the highlights of my high school life and middle school life.
No kidding. I was just telling the same person I was talking to about the manager thing. I said, dude, I had this manager that literally would take all the uniforms after the games, would take them back to school, throw them in the laundry, would spend hours washing them, folding them, putting them all in these nice, neat little piles. All the guys had to do was come in and grab their uniform before we left for every game. It was almost like a miracle. Like it just happened, you know? I never actually saw you in there doing it. It just got done. So you were that good.
A lot of it happened during PE, which you also coached and allowed me to skip so that I could do this. But
I just knew what your strengths were, Jon. It wasn't necessarily PE.
It was dodgeball, street hockey, and washing uniforms during PE.
That's right. And probably tormenting what was her name? Liz Marcello a little bit in there at the same time while she was teaching English, possibly.
She had it coming.
Well, that's the way it goes. So I remember. I'm gonna see if I can remember who your professional sports preferences are. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you're an Indianapolis Colts fan.
No.
For football, no, Dolphins.
That's right.
Dolphins. That's right. You and Jordan had this weird Dolphins thing going on
since third grade?
Dolphins and Blue Jays.
No.
For baseball, no. What was it for baseball?
But did
you have a baseball?
I never really had a baseball team.
As long as it wasn't the Yankees.
No, really, other than being settled as a Dolphins fan, whatever you were rooting for is who I was rooting for, because I figured he's the coach. He knows who's right.
Yeah, so you picked the Dolphins because you sure weren't rooting for New England at that point in your life. So,
well, I did buy a New England Patriots hat. That was probably the first piece of NFL merch that I ever owned.
You wear that. That's a risky business wearing that around Indianapolis, man. I speak from experience.
I just knew that the Indiana people didn't have anything going on and didn't know what they were talking about. And so, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the manager thing. Every good coach needs a good manager. I'm a solid believer in that. And honestly, since I've been here in Pennsylvania, I've either been without a manager or my managers haven't been that great. So what are maybe just some of the things that you took pride in as a manager when you were helping me out, and you did everything well. So I'm don't mind saying that, you were great. What are some things you took pride in when you were doing that job?
I started when I was in 7th grade because Mr. Walters, who was a personal hero, he's gone to be with the Lord now.
Yeah.
All my friends tried out for the team and every single one of them got on the team. And I was just that bad. I mean, I don't know if he listens to this show, but my good friend from since elementary school, Daniel Moyer, he made it on the team.
Yeah,
and I didn't. And that speaks volumes as to how really, truly bad I was.
Did that hurt you? Did that hurt? Or were you like, there's got to be something else that I could do well?
For me, it was kind of like, that adds up. I wasn't sure I was going to make it and wasn't really sure that I wanted to. But Mr. Walters comes over to me and he says, listen, I've got an incredibly valuable position. I want to take you under my wing. I want to teach you how I coach. I want to teach you how I lead. I want to teach you the game. He's like, how much about the game do you know? And I'm like, 0.
Yep.
And so number one on the list of things to take pride in was getting to learn, not just from the player's perspective, but being a part of all of those coaching meetings and learning a lot of leadership principles as well. Because as the manager, you're pretty involved in what goes into a practice and what goes into traveling for the game and the game itself. And then what happens after the game, the players kind of get to show up and do their thing. And for me, the biggest thing that I got to take pride in was you being able to leave your office and get on the bus and know that every single detail for that trip was taken care of. And so after the first maybe 2 games, I was like, all right, this is my thing now.
Yeah. Yep. And it was, I never had to worry about, is the book on board? Are the balls on board? Do the guys have their uniforms? What am I forgetting? I probably forgot things that you remembered, to bring to games and trips. And we didn't just go, across town for games. We would travel 3-4 hours and we would go spend over, multiple nights in hotels and stuff. And you just had all that down. So, so that's great. Anything else?
Ooh, as anyone from that school would remember, me being a super nerd and, wearing the dress clothes that were beyond the prescribed uniform. On game days I fit in because all the other guys had to wear a tie, but on the other days I was alone in my nerdiness.
Yeah, the Lone Ranger.
But taking pride in our school walking out and being put together. A lot of people showed up and they're a wrinkled, smelly mess, and it showed, and you knew that they had walked into the gymnasium. But our guys showing up and looking sharp every time, and our guys walking into the locker room and everything just kind of clicking. Those were big deals to me. You did a really good job of making me feel like a valued part of the team. Even when it came to, we won these state championships. Was it 2 or 3 years in a row?
Yep.
And, all the guys are running out to get their medal and their trophy. And you as a coach who was sweating and crying and, this big deal because you're graduating in another class of seniors that you loved. And you turned around that first year and looked at me and was like, hey, get out there. Come on. Like, you took time to notice me. And so I got to take pride in because I'm a behind the scenes part of this team, I get to be a part of the public win. Like that was pretty cool. I still have those medals actually.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a great point. I'm a firm believer in everybody that's part of the process should get to celebrate because of just that. You're all part of the process, whether you're a manager or a player or an assistant coach or a parent. Everybody plays their role, right? So that's a great point. And I want to just back up a little bit to somebody you brought up earlier, Mike Walters, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Walters, if I'm not mistaken. Wow, what a great man he was.
Yes.
Like I came to that school at a time where I was pretty young when I got there. I needed somebody to do to me kind of what they did to you. And he was such a good friend to me, just took me under his wing and taught me so much. What a great guy. Any memories of him you want to share?
Oh, so many. Here was a man who treated everyone like they were in his, unit. And this short, skinny, older man who even, the quote unquote worst student in our school respected because he demanded it. And he loved the Lord in such an evident way. It even showed up in his locker room. And he was like a nobody left behind. It wasn't I'm going to be the fair coach that lets everybody play, because he was heavy on we're going to win. But we were going to glorify God while we were. And I'll tell you one thing that he did, I think intentionally, that I still do to this day, just as a tribute to him. Most people, it would mean nothing to, but because he made such a profound impact on my life, I grew up in a really abusive household, and there was a lot of trauma. I think he saw some of those things and kind of stepped into kind of like a school dad role at the point that he mistakenly was like, come on, son, a couple of times. And that actually meant a lot. And
you didn't mind that, did you?
No, not at all. But when he would drive the school bus, he wore the yellow hat.
Absolutely.
But when he was coaching the game, he wore like the red hat. And when he was, outside doing his thing, and it was like the same style hat, but it was different colors for different things. And you just knew like, okay, it's time to get serious. And so in our ministry, the last few years, we've traveled the country in a bus, and a lot of times I'm driving it. And so it's on my shelf right here. I have a hat that is a Mike Walters hat, and I wear it every time I drive that bus. It's like, fantastic. It's time to go. And we were on our way on a trip once. A storm was coming down. We were headed into Marquette Manor. And it was crazy, unsafe to pull over to the side of the road, but unsafe to keep going. Couldn't see very far. And he comes on the PA system of that bus, and he tells all the players, all right, everybody quiet down and buckle up if your seat's got a seatbelt. He's like, the bus can handle the storm, and I'm pretty sure I can. So I'm going to need everybody to be focused with me. And that was how he led his team. He's like, all right, it's going to be okay. We can handle this. I'm pretty sure I can. You just follow me as we go, and we're going to move forward no matter what. And nothing but crazy respect for this man who commanded it.
Yeah. I can't think of a personality or a man more well suited to be coaching middle school boys than Mike Walters was. Yes. So it says some great memories there. I had forgotten about that. Like, now that you said it, I'd forgotten about the hat things, but I do remember the yellow hat when he would be driving that bus up there. Yes. And it's good times. So I'm getting old, man. Like I'm 51, I'm getting ready to turn 52 this year. My memory isn't as great as it was, but I do remember a couple memories of, some things that happened to you and I down along the way. And some of them we can't share on here.
No.
Some of them we can, but I remember you and I specifically this one time we're walking through Walmart, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're walking through Walmart. We're walking pretty briskly because I feel like we were looking for something, but we had to get back to the bus or
trying
to a
to
game
get lawn chairs.
Right? That's right. And this lady stopped us, or like she snapped her fingers at us and waved us. She's like, hey, do you guys work here or something like that? Like, walk me through that. What exactly happened there anyways?
I mean, we're in a rush because we were in Hammond, Indiana for the big tournament there at First Baptist.
That's right.
And we found out that they were not prepared for the number of people that were coming. And so we're like, we need chairs, we need snacks. They have nothing. So we're like, we drove the bus to Walmart, right? 60 passenger bus, me and you on it. And we were running through this Walmart so we can be back in time for this game. And this, I guess, we would have been dressed up somewhat. Just something about us probably, said to this Karen, like, they work
but
here.
Think about what you're saying there. We were dressed up and somebody thought we were working at Walmart. All right.
And we didn't stop the first time because we're like, there's no way that this is for us. But she wasn't about to let it go. She like snapping her fingers in our face. Excuse me. Hey, you work here.
Yep.
And I think we gave her the answer to whatever it was she was looking for. And she, thanked us and went on her merry little way.
She went on her way. Yeah. We probably, I'm just going to say this. And, there's a lot of great Walmart workers out there, but we were probably more competent than most of the people working there that day.
Well, let's be honest. They should have paid us that day.
No doubt. Oh, man, some good memories there. So there were a couple other guys that managed for me. Ethan Nichter was a good manager. He's and I still talk to Ethan once in a while. I think he's doing okay. I got lots of good memories with him. I remember, I think this was Ethan. I don't think it was you, but I remember coming in. You remember where my office was, like right off the gym?
Yes.
But then if you went through there was like a little equipment room, right? Yes. Back in the back with shelves. I remember coming in there once in a while, and Ethan would be on the top shelf up there, sound asleep, taking a snooze. So I don't know if you ever took advantage of that snoozing area or not, but
I did not. That was all Ethan thing. But I'll give you my favorite memory of your office.
Okay.
Was that our school being extremely conservative, and just about every year they came up with about 10 new rules that we needed to follow. And one particular year, they were pulling every student into the office and threatening them, if you don't delete your MySpace account, you're expelled. You have 24 hours. And it was the stir. I mean, kids whose parents didn't know they had a MySpace account were having to.
Right.
And I still don't know, which one of the principal's daughter's job it was to get online and find all these people. I have a suspicion, but
I'm sending this directly to Dan Nelson when I'm done, please. By the way.
And so it's bad. Everything is tense. If you say the word MySpace, it's like borderline demerits then.
Yeah. Oof.
And so this awful desk in this grungy office that they stuffed you in, we deemed that we would call it MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
And it was like, that's the school space, but this is my space. And so anytime that you would ask me like, hey, where's that stuff at? I'd be like, oh, I left it on MySpace. Or you'd be like, hey, did you see what I put on MySpace today? And I'd go, no, what? And you'd be like, just go check it out. You're going to like it.
Yeah.
And
I wonder why I was always in the principal's office
over it.
Yeah. No kidding. I think I was in there just as much as you, probably. Good grief, man. So much to learn. I tell you what. Well, I want to wrap up the manager part of this, because this obviously is a coaching podcast, and it's by coaches for coaches. That's my tagline. So, hey, all you coaches out there, if you're looking for a great manager, hit me up. Jon was the best. We can go over, some of the characteristics that I saw in him. Professional, thorough, organized, respectful, all the things you want in a manager. Jon, you were the best. Thank you for those good years. I still appreciate it. I still remember them fondly, and I still haven't found anybody quite like you to do that job.
Well, if you don't mind me giving a word to the coaches on this subject, I coach leaders now. And a lot of what I'm coaching pastors and church leaders in, I learned from watching you, Matt, coach these players. And what happens in, on the practice court or on the practice field, what happens in the locker room, like the staff meeting, what happens on the bench for the people that you have to say, hey, it's time to take a rest. Those are principles that apply to life. And from the manager point of view, a lot of coaches are like, I don't need that. I got that. It would take me a lot of time to train somebody to do that. But if you'll make that investment in that guy or that girl when they're in 7th grade and they stick with you through their senior year, you're going to find out in their second year that organization is the very first point that you can put on the board. And when your team doesn't have the mental clutter of finding this, and when you as a coach don't have the stress of wondering where everybody's at and where everything is at, if you would invest 1 year in one guy and teach him everything that you do, make him coach junior, all of a sudden you have new insight at halftime when the points are low, and you have new insight post game when your head is hot and you're like, what happened? And they're like, well, what you didn't see. But you also have so much freedom pre-game, knowing that all I have to do is show up and coach, and all they have to do is show up and play. That's a big enough job in and of itself. And every other tiny little thing is all taken care of. It's the very first point. And if you put that point on the board quickly, you'll be surprised at how fast the other points come.
Yep. Nope. Those are, man, I knew that this would be a good episode, and I haven't been let down whatsoever so far. So appreciate you coming on. Those are kind words, but true words, and spoken from somebody who has learned firsthand at the hand of some, well, I'll include myself in this, but some good coaches, right? So, and I'm not the only one, so it's great. So I want to shift gears a little bit. You're a patriot, right, Jon? I mean, you love America.
Amen.
I love America. I'm obviously disturbed by a lot of the trends that are going on in our country today, but I want to zero in on the topic of the American flag, the national anthem, and just the foolishness going on in the college. It's trickled down into college. It started at the professional ranks. Now it's in college. It's probably in high school as well. I've never really had it happen to me, but this is applicable because I feel like it will happen to every coach at every level eventually. And that's this nonsense of either disappearing or disrespecting the American flag during the national anthem. What are your thoughts on that?
So many. What's happening on our, courts and fields really is indicative of what has and hasn't taken place inside of our history classrooms. And so when you rewrite or you erase history, it becomes really, really easy to bring disrespect into the game, and disrespect to our nation and disrespect to our anthem. And so my thought on it is, that jersey that they're wearing, they would be disgusted and irritated if someone were to graffiti it, stamp on it, light it on fire, or, exit when their name is called. That everybody's going to feel a little let down when that happens. How much more do our soldiers that are fighting and defending feel when we say, I don't need to stand for that? It's absolutely disgusting, and it points toward a deep spiritual issue as well. For the people who are like, oh, hashtag Christian nationalism, have, first of all, no clue what they're talking about. Every prophet of the Old Testament was passionate about seeing repentance in their nation and the security of their nation. One of them in particular worked really hard to rebuild the borders of his city while he fought for the establishment of a great capital city in his nation. The apostles of the New Testament, I mean, early on, they're like, okay, is it time for the kingdom to come? Is it time now? Is it time now? And they were learning that our nation is not our primary allegiance. We're primarily citizens of heaven, if you're a follower of Christ, and secondarily citizens of a nation. But Jesus himself would say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And that anthem speaks to a history that is not perfect, but is more righteous and more just than any other nation in the world's history. And that anthem, when played, calls us to remembrance of the great sacrifice that people have made, and to kneel or leave or not show up to disrespect this anthem that allows you the freedom to do just that really points toward the fact that you have no gratitude, you have no appreciation. And if you don't for the men who are fighting, you don't for the people who've paid for the tickets to be there to see you play. It points toward entitlement, and it points toward a life that's going to end in great disappointment and loneliness. And if the trends persist, a nation that won't be free for very long.
Yeah, definitely, man. Those are some great thoughts. I really appreciate that. Sobering, really, because I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, unfortunately. And we as coaches have to learn, we have to educate ourselves as to how we're going to respond when this happens to us. Because I feel like right now, I feel like as a coach myself, I'm unprepared for this to happen to me. Like if one of my players pull this stunt right now, I feel like, well, I would just be angry. And, but I think there's probably better ways, righteous anger, but there's better ways to handle it than just getting angry. But we need to be prepared about how we're going to handle this when it comes up. You know what I'm saying?
Some people are doing this and proving their ignorance. And people are always going to be down on what they're not up on. And so first step is probably not anger at them. First step is probably to ask questions about what was the source of this, and to get to the root of, there's probably either a lack of knowledge or a misunderstanding of truth. And every player needs to have a firm grasp on what is truth. What is ultimately the point? What's the point of the game? What does a point equal? And how many points can I put on the board for my team? All rooted in who gets to be the definer of truth. Have you ever had a referee that didn't define truth the same way as you did, and it elicited great anger? And it's like, man, we lost the game because that guy didn't understand truth. If you understand truth, if you understand, would be another Mike Walters thing. He took time to teach his players, not just the game, but he taught a course called logical thinking. And you're learning, like, how are we shaping their brains, and how are we structuring their worldview, and how are we helping them to dissect information and come out on the other side with an answer that's true. So for the player that's like, I'm not doing that, I'm disrespecting that. Step one, what are you thinking? What don't you know? And if we get to the end of that and you're still not understanding, then what we have is an error in processing information. And that tells me you're going to be a liability on my team down the road. Because if you don't see the point in taking a stand, then you're not going to see the point in team loyalty down the road. So that it speaks to some deep issues that most young men need coached through. They need coaching.
Let's just agree that the first time I'm faced with this, I'm bringing you in to give that speech to my guys.
I'm in. I've been itching to come see you in Pennsylvania, so let's do it.
Hey, listen, before we sign off, I should have done this at the beginning, but tell everybody what you're doing, what your life looks like right now.
Well, I pastor a church called Honor Church in North Orlando, Florida. Since, well, man, you talk about being old. I don't think I'm old, but like, wow, time is really flying. God blessed me with the opportunity to plant a church several years ago that he put his hand on, and we grew to multiple campuses, and that opened up the door for national speaking, and it's brought a lot of digital opportunities as well. So my days consist of, I have a great wife and an amazing daughter. So I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a coach to pastors and leaders, especially church planters. I pastor the greatest church in Florida. And between all of that and the travel that I get to do, I'm busy, but I'm fulfilled, and I'm having the time of my life.
Excellent. I'm proud of you and for what you've accomplished, Jon. I know that obviously it's the Lord's work in your life, but you have allowed him to work with you and through you. You have turned into quite a quite a young man that is being used by God, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on this podcast episode. It's been good to reminisce. It's been good to catch up. And I must say, I've had some favorite episodes, but this is probably my favorite one. Well, my brother's going to get on my case because I've had him a couple times on here too. But
you always tell me to call you Matt, but you'll always be, Mr. Philbrick in my phone.
Change that.
But if I could say this to you, one particular moment sticks out because you weren't just a coach to the students on your team. You were a coach to our school, and you handled yourself well when things got ridiculous. And you taught us how to think and how to respond. And with all of the craziness going on in my family, I remember walking into your office one day and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's getting bad. I'm at my wit's end. Help me. And you just said, here's my phone. Let's figure this out. And that's all the details of that situation I'll share on the show. Just to say, you coach sports well. Obviously, you led a championship team almost every year that you were there in every sport that you were a part of. And you brought around you great coaches in other sports who knew what you didn't know. You surrounded yourself with people that were better than you in other areas, but you coached us in life. And I'm at where I'm at today, largely because you took the time to care. And it means the world to me. And you'll go down as a hero in my book, just like Mike Walters, for being a coach for life and spirituality, and not just for sports. So thank you.
Oof. Well, I don't know how we can top that, but I appreciate that, Jon. I appreciate the kind words. Listen, keep up the good work. Definitely will have you on this podcast again. And I'm thrilled that we were able to get this together finally tonight. And I'll be following you on Instagram and Facebook like I always do, seeing what you're up to there. But great to connect with you kind of in person again.
Hey, you too.
All right, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Real Game. It was great to have my friend Jon Groves on this episode with me today. I'm going to leave you with a quote from the movie A Bug's Life, which if you haven't seen, you need to make it a point to see. But the quote is this: the first rule of leadership is everything is your fault. So good luck, coaches, and coach on.